Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I am Muhammad Abu Bakr, and in this video we shall be solving the Cambridge O-Level Physics question paper 11 from the May-June 2023 series, paper 1 of multiple choice questions only. So let's start our video. So the question number 1 is, a student wishes to measure directly the circumference of a football. So what is the most suitable instrument to use? So a clock has nothing to do with the circumference of the football, so it will not help. A measuring tape is the best option he can utilize here. A micrometer again is not used for comparing the circumference of the football, and a ruler again won't help measure the circumference of the football. Best is the measuring tape, so B is the right option. Question number 2 is, which equation contains two vector quantities? A vector quantity is a one that requires magnitude as well as displacement. Now I can see here that acceleration is a vector, velocity is a vector, time is a scalar, speed is a scalar, distance scalar. All these are scalars, so B is incorrect. C is also incorrect because mass is a scalar, density is a scalar. D also is incorrect, so A is the right option. A has acceleration and velocity, two vector quantities. Question number 3, very easy question. Forces of 6 Newton and 8 Newton act as shown. So which diagram shows the results are of these two forces? So here you can see that this is a right angle triangle. So the angle here is 90 degrees. So you can say that uh, you will construct you can construct definitely a resultant force which divides this 90 degree angle into two, so 45 degree each. So this would be the resultant force R in this direction, which divides this angle 90 degree into 45. So that would be A. All other are incorrect. You have to check the direction of R as well. So A is the right option. Question number 4 is again very easy. A speed time graph for the journey of a car is shown. So what is the distance time graph for the journey? Now for the distance time graph, I know that and I can see here that the gradient is constant. Gradient of speed is constant here, and gradient is increasing during this portion. What does mean? What does this mean? This means that the distance is increasing first. Distance is increasing, and then at a greater speed, distance is increasing at a greater speed, and then it becomes again, and then it the velocity becomes constant and the distance goes on increasing. So if the distance goes on increasing, so D shows that this body has stopped here, so D and C both are incorrect. Now the distance, now during the first time the speed is greater, so the distance will increase. So as now you have to choose between A and B. The distance will increase first, and then it will go on increasing at constant speed. Distance won't decrease, with distance won't end. Now as if I try to plot a graph here, I take this as 1, I take this as 2, I take this as 1, I take this as 2. Now if I compare the values here of 1 and 2, I can see that there is a sharp decrease in the values here, very sharp. Some of you might not be able to see, but there is a very sharp decrease here. But in A there is not a decrease, there is not a decrease, it goes on increasing, there is not any decrease. You can see the slope is a bit like this. So it decreases somehow here, whereas actually the speed is not decreasing and the distance will never decrease. So B is the right option. Question number 5 is, the gravitational field strength on Earth is 9.8 newtons per kilogram. The gravitational field strength on man of mass is 3.7 newtons per kilogram. The difference between the weight of an object and the weight of the object, weight of the same object on moon or on Mars is 25 newtons. What is the mass of the object? Now the difference between weight is uh, mg minus mg is equal to 25. Now it is a single object, So the G for Earth here is 9.8, and for Mars it is 3.7. So I subtract 3.7 from 9.8, so that is 6.1, and 25 divided by 6.1 is equal to mass. So mass would be 4.09 kg, approximately equal to 4.1 kg. So C is the right option. Question number 5. Question number 6. A student determines the density of a solid metal cube. Which piece of equipment does the student use? So a solid metal cube, he has to measure its density. For now, he will what he will use here is a balance, because he needs to measure mass first of all. So C and D do not contain a mass or a mass measuring object. So C and D both are incorrect, and he will never use a force meter. He has not to calculate the uh, force in newtons here. He has to measure the length and then multiply length into length to get its volume. So he will use a ruler since it is a metal cube. So B would be the right option. Question number 7 here. Now the diagram shows the only two forces acting on a trolley that is accelerating at 0.12 meters per second. What is the mass of the trolley? Now if you see clearly here, there are two forces, 3.6 on the left hand side, 6.0 on the right hand side. So the resultant force Fr, I'm writing Fr is 6 minus 3.6. So the resultant force is 2.4 newtons. Now this resultant force is producing an acceleration of 0.12 seconds, meters per second square. So if I apply the Newton's second law of motion here, Newton's second equation of motion, sorry. So F divided by A, so I will get the mass here. So I apply the Newton's law of motion, second law of motion. So yes, I apply second law of motion, not equations. 2.4 divided by 0.12 is equal to the mass. So the value comes to be 20 kilograms. So 20 kilogram is the mass of this object here, of this trolley here. So C is the right option. Question number 8 is: a spring is stretched to different lengths by a variable force. The graph shows how the size of the force depends on length to which the spring is stretched. Now, uh, so this force on the y-axis and there is the extension on the x-axis. Now what is the spring constant K of the spring? Now I know that F is equal to Kx, where Kx is the gradient. So K would be equal to the quadrant. K would be the quadrant here. I know this. And how can I calculate the quadrant here? That I divide the values of the force. I divide force over the extension, which is x. So I will get the value of K. Now here the quadrant for K is, so I take this point. So at 6 I take this point. I'm using a different color here. I take this point here. So at the extension of 25 centimeter cube, the force is 6 newtons, but the extension of first 10 centimeter, is not caused by any force. So I will have to subtract the forces here. So I will subtract 0 from 6, because during the first 10 there is 0 force. As you can see here, there is 0 force, and I divide and I subtract uh, 10 from 25. I have taken the value 25 here. So I divide 10 from 25. So I will get 6 by 15. So the value will come out to be 0.40 newtons per centimeter exactly. So B would be the right option. Question number 9 is a very easy question again. A uniform horizontal beam pivoted at its right end is in equilibrium. A force of 60 newtons acts vertically upward on the beam as shown. So what is the weight of the beam? Now this beam is balanced and there is not any object placed on this balance. So I know that for an object to be balanced, the sum of anti-clockwise moments should be equal to the sum of clockwise moments. So weight means that mg of the clockwise is equal to the mg of the sorry sum of clockwise moments, and torque is equal to fl. So it means that for the for the clockwise motion, the fl is equal to fl. Now on the and this 60 newton is producing a clockwise moment, clockwise, and this will produce an clockwise. Hmm, this will produce a clockwise moment, and this will produce an anti-clockwise moment. So this is the ACV, the anti-clockwise moment, and this is the clockwise moment. Now the force acting here is 60 newtons into an area of 20, and the force acting here, I have to find this force. First of all, I will find this force. So this force would be something like 40, I guess, and 30 into, I call this y. So y would be equal to 40 newtons. Y would be equal to 40 newtons. It is 60 here. So if y is equal to the 14 newtons, means that a 14 newton force is acting downward here. So simply the weight of the object would be 60 newtons. F1 plus F2 is equal to the weight. So 60 plus 40 would be the weight, which is 100. So 100 would be the weight of the object here. So D would be the right option. Hope you understood. Question number 10. A constant frictional force acts on a moving object for a short amount of time, causing the momentum of the object to decrease. Now, which expression is used to calculate a time for which the force acts? So, if I divide the change in momentum, if I divide uh, rho minus divided by force, so I will get time. Is this true? If you look at this if you look at this clearly, you can see that I am right. This is the right option because the time would be equal to the change in momentum. Friction is acting on the body, the momentum is decreasing, so the change in momentum, and if I divide it by the force, I will get a time for which the force acts. So A is the right option. Question number 11. A large stone is rolled uh, onto a lorry using a ramp. The length of the lamp is L. The stone is lifted at a height of h. This. Now the mass of the stone is m. The weight of the stone is w. The which expression is used to calculate a usual work done on the stone? Now the weight of this ball is acting downward. The weight is acting downward. Now this body is now being moved upward on this track, on this L. Now some of you might direct calculate work is equal to Fs, and you take the weight as the force acting in this direction, but it is not. Weight always acts downwards, so the work would be equal to weight into something here, and this something would be the height. If weight is acting on the y-axis, then definitely the height, for which the increase in height would be the vertical distance, and this would be equal, this is also on the y-axis, so both are on the y-axis. So w into h means that so question number 11 for B would be the right option, because w and h both act on the y-axis, whereas the weight acts downward. So B is the right option. Question number 12, very very easy question. The diagram shows a burning candle. Now which energy store is associated with the burning candle? It is the chemical energy which is transforming into heat energy. Not elastic, not electrostatic, not nuclear. So A is the right option. Question number 13, again very easy one. An African elephant has a mass of 6,000 newtons and his 4 feet has an area of 0.20 meters per second square. The G is 9.8 newtons per kilogram. What is the average pressure due to the average pressure due to the elephant when it is standing stationary on all 4 feet on level ground? So pressure, I know pressure is equal to the force acting per unit area. Area is 0.20 here, but what's the trick here again, that each feet has an area of 0.20 meters square. So means 4 feet will simply have 0.20 into 4, and the force acting here is, so the force acting here is actually weight. So if I multiply 6,000 by 6,000 into 9.8, 5880, 58,800, and I divide this and I divide 0.2 into 4, divide it by 0.8. So the answer here would be equal to 73.5 kilopascal, so approximately 74 kilopascal. So C would be the right option. Question number 14, which row describes describes the shape and volume of a liquid at constant temperature? So at constant temperature, what will happen here, that so one thing again, so this is equal to 73500 pascal, so this will be equal to 74 kilopascal approximately. Question number 13. Now for question number 14, at constant temperature, what will be the change in what will be the shape and volume of the liquid? The shape will not be fixed here. Shape will not be fixed because liquid molecules are continuously motile in its container, whereas the volume is fixed. If this liquid is in a fixed container, then I know that the volume of water in this container is fixed. It will not change. So shape is not fixed, volume is fixed, so C is the right option. Question number 15 is again a very easy one. Which row shows how the forces and the distances between the particles in a solid generally compare with the forces and distances in a liquid? Forces between particles in a solid are stronger because they cannot move, and the distance between particles in solid is lesser as they do not move, as you know. So B is the right option. Question number 16, an incomplete statement about latent heat is given. Latent heat is the, this is one required to overcome the bonds between molecules and change the two of the substance. Which words are inserted into gap 1, gap 2 to correctly complete the sentence? Latent heat is the energy, it is not the force. You all know this. Latent heat is the energy required to change the state, not the temperature. The temperature automatically changes. The force, the energy required to change the state of an object, of a substance. So A is the right option. Latent heat of fusion and latent heat of vaporization. So either you can convert it into gas, or you can convert it into a liquid or a solid. So A would be the right answer. You can change its state. That's the definition of the latent heat. So A is the right option. Question number 17. A cold solid is placed on the top of a hot solid. Thermal energy is transferred from the hot solid to the cold one. What is the explanation for this? Now there is energy transfer here. Thermal energy is transferred from hot solid to the cold one. So explanation here is a solid expands, so its particle will move further apart. No, this is not an explanation for this. A solid, yes, expands, uh, but this is again not an explanation why energy change happens here. Energy is transferred from one particle to the another. Yes, this is simple. We all know this. Energy is transferred from a hot body to cold body. So B is the right answer. Heat always rises. Again, this is not an explanation. Molecules are freely to move. No, they are fixed among their positions. So D is also incorrect. Question number 18, a very easy question. Now some of you might get intimidated after directly seeing this image, but it is very easy actually. A house is to be thermally insulated to reduce thermal energy loss and reduce fuel cost. Okay. Which type of thermal insulation pays back the cost of installation in the shortest time? Now, the main thing here is that you do not have to take into account the type of installation and its effectivity in reducing the thermal energy loss here. You just have to focus on the installation cost and the energy cost saving here. So now you have nothing to do with the type of insulation. All you have to find is is that type of installation that pays back the cost of installation in the shortest period of time. So the double glazing cost, the installation cost is 7,000 and the energy cost saving is 4,000 per year. So that will approximately take uh, 1.75 year for double glazing to return its money. Whereas for drought proofing, it will take 100 divided by 30. It will take, no, sorry, 100 divided, it will take 100 divided by 30. It will take 3.33 years something. For drought proofing, it will take 3.33 years. For cavity wall insulation, it will take 700 divided by 200. It will take approximately 3.5 years here. And I know that loft insulation is the best because the installation cost is 300 and this 300 is returned in 1 year. So loft installation is the best. D is the right option. Quite easy this one. Question number 10, 19, again a very easy question. The diagram shows two divergent rays of light from an object O being reflected from a plane mirror. At which position is the image formed? Now, this is the object. Light will go in this direction and then it moves in this direction. It reflects. So there would be a formation of image. There would not be any formation of image because light hits here and then light moves back here, so there won't be any image formed here. And this O is at the same distance as B, C and D. Now I already eliminate C and D, and this is a reflection experiment. So if O is at this distance to the mirror A, this is the plane, this is the mirror. Is if A is if O is at OA distance and A and B is AB distance, then AB would be equal to OA because it's a plane mirror. So that means B would be the place where the image would be formed, not at A. Question number 20, again a very easy one. Light is incident on a mirror at an angle of 45 degrees as 45 degrees as shown. The mirror can be rotated about an axis into the page through point X. The mirror is rotated until the light is reflected back along its original path. So these are the catch word here. Means that there is not any change of path of light. Through which angle is the mirror rotated? What does this mean? This means that if I place this mirror X at this point, so light will come in this direction and it will move in the same direction as well. Means that there won't be any divergence here, divergence of light here. There won't be any reflection. So now I have to calculate the angle by which I have to move this plane mirror X so that it forms an image that travels so that the light is reflected back its original path. So if it is 45 degrees C here, then obviously I have to move it like this, and this would also be equal to 45 degrees C. So you now might understand I want to attain a angle of 90 degrees C. There is already an angle of 45 degrees C, so 45 plus 45, that will be equal to the 90 which I want here. So I will move this 45 degrees uh, in the clockwise direction. I guess I have to move it like this, in the clockwise direction. So C is the right option. Question number 21. And this is quite tricky, but not much difficult. A ray of light, a ray of light is incident on a plastic block in air at an angle of incidence I. The refractive index of the plastic is n. Now the light ray refracts along the plastic air boundary when it reaches x. So the light is totally internally reflected. So which equation is correct? So when is the light totally internally reflected? When angle of when sine of angle of refraction becomes equal to, no sorry, when angle of refraction is equal to the angle of incidence, so that will be the time when the light will totally internally reflect. So what can I do here is that now for the Snell's law here, I have n is equal to sine I over sine r, as you all know. Now sine of I is equal to the sine of r. So I have to find the sine of I here. So mm, so sine of, as I had said earlier, total internal reflection occurs when the uh, when the angle of refraction is equal to the angle of incidence, means that this is the angle of incidence, this 41 degree C is equal to 41 degree C. So 41 degree, not degree C, sorry, 41 degree is the angle of incidence, and means that 41 degrees would be the angle of refraction. So sine of 41 into n, I multiply this here, into n will give me sine of incidence, as I can see in C. So C would be the right option. Question number 22, again a very easy one. The diagram shows white light entering a prism. So let me choose my favorite color. Yes, purple. So this white light enters a prism. So this white light X, it is dispersed here and refracted both. So what happens at point X, and what is the color of the light that strikes the screen at point Z? So at point X, both dispersion and refraction would occur. The white light would be disintegrated into all its 7 colors. And now at point Z, I know that red color red color would be at this point and blue color would be at this point. Red color A blue color has the highest frequency. A blue color has high frequency, and red color has low frequency. So red color will go on to hit the screen at Z. So it would be red light. C would be the right option. Question number 23. Which row shows a name of the electromagnetic spectrum with a wavelength longer than that of a visible region and a region with a frequency that is greater than that of the visible light? This is a very easy question, but to solve this, you have to memorize uh, about the wavelengths, among the wavelengths variation over the visible light and below the visible light. For the wavelengths longer than the visible light are infrared rays. Among infrared rays, if I recall it, that I think infrared rays, microwaves, and I think radio waves have wavelength longer than the visible light, and for free, and the ultraviolet rays have wavelength shorter than the visible light. But if the wavelength is shorter, the frequency is higher. The frequency is highest in this case for the ultraviolet UV rays, and UV rays are much stronger. They carry most energy here among these four. So A is the right option. You can check this from your book as well. I have done right here. Question number 24. Sound travels at different speeds in different states of matter. Which list gives the three states of matter arranged in order of the speed of sound from slowest to fastest? The speed of sound is slowest in gas. It is middlemost in liquid and fastest in solid, because in solids the energy is transferred fastest. So A is the right option. Question number 25, a very easy one. Bar magnets and various non-magnetic and demagnetized metal bars are placed in the different arrangements. Show in which arrangement do the bars repel. In A, this nitrogen will attract the nitrogen of this will cause this will cause magnetic induction, and this will induce an N pole here. Similarly, this will produce an N pole here. Both of these will attract, these both will hug each other. And in D, there is north pole to the north pole, so these both will definitely repel. So D would be the right option. Question number 26, again a very easy one question. This paper is actually very easy. If you have your concepts, you can solve this clearly. This is a piece of cake. Question number 26, a student uses a wooden clamp and a stand to hold a freely suspended bar magnet. So this is a bar magnet. The diagrams show that in experiment 1, the student holds a bar magnet next to the suspended magnet. Okay, so I understand. In experiment 2, the student holds an iron bar next to the suspending magnet. Yes, I know. I can see here this. In experiment 3, the student holds a steel bar next to the suspended magnet. So, in which experiments does the suspended magnet move? What will happen here? This bar magnet will attract the south pole. There would be a creation of north pole here and a north pole here because of magnetic induction. And this iron bar will attract the south pole, means that both of these will attract each other, both of these will move. So experiment 2 and 3 will also move along with experiment A, which is already attracting the bar magnet. So 1, 2 and 3 all will move here. So A is the right option. Question number 27. In an electrostatics experiment, a plastic rod is rubbed with a cloth. The cloth becomes negatively charged. Okay. So which diagram shows the charge on the rod and describes the movement of the charge? Now, the charge on the cloth is negative, means that the rod will get a positive charge as shown in A and B. C and D are incorrect. Now, for the movement of the charge, I know that protons never move. Positive charges never move actually. It is the electrons which always move. The old concepts of conventional current have now been, you can say, falsified. So A is the right option. Only the electron moves. So A is the right option. Question number 28, quite interesting question. Object X is stationary and positively charged. Okay, it experiences a force due to the field lines produced by object Y. The arrows show the direction of the field produced by Y. Which statement about the direction of force on X is correct? First thing is that object X is stationary. What does this mean? It means that it will not experience a magnetic field. So you can eliminate C and D. Now this is a positive. This Y exerts the electric field away from it, means that it is a positive test charge. A test charge is always positive, and this X is also positive, and light charges repel, so it will move towards the right because it is in an electric field. Yes, it will move towards the right because both Y and X will repel each other. So A is the right option. Question number 29. The diagram shows a battery of three 1.5 volt cells. What is an advantage of this? What is the advantage of this arrangement of cell? Now all these cells are connected in parallel, means that the voltage will remain the same. The voltage will remain the same. So what is an advantage here? The battery can supply a current for a longer time than a single 1.5 volt cell. Yes, this is the most compelling statement because now there are three 1.5 volt cells. Although the voltage remains the same, but the power supplied by these batteries, the current supplied by these three cells will continue will this current will remain for a longer time. This current will flow for a longer time because all these are connected in parallel, so the voltage remain the same, and the the current will be supplied for a longer time. So A is the most compelling statement. The battery can supply EMF between 0 volt and 4.5 volts. No. The battery supplies more energy to each coulomb of charge than a single 1.5 volt cell. Now, already the voltage remains the same, so it will not supply more energy. The EMF of the battery is 4.5 volts. No. So you can also do this by the method of elimination. So I get the answer A because now these three cells will drive an electric current for a longer time because they are connected in a parallel arrangement. So A is the right option. Question number 30, a tricky MCQ. A potential divider consists of a LDR and a resistor connected to a 6 volts battery. Now the output is 3 volts. What is the resistance of the LDR? Now this 6 volt battery will supply a 3 volt current from here and 3 volt current from here. Total output is 3 volts, means that the voltage gets half here. So the voltage gets half here. For 10,000 ohm the voltage gets half, then similarly for the LDR the resistance will also be 10,000 ohms because the voltage half half here is also 1.5, which combine together to form 3 volts. So it could be C, but I can apply the potential divider rule here. So by this the output voltage is 3, which is equal to the resistance over resistance of LDR plus the resistance of this fixed resistor into 6, which is the voltage. So 3 divided by 6, 0.5, and I multiply 0.5 with the denominator 0.5 R plus 5,000 plus 5,000 0.5 R plus 5,000, which will be equal to the resistance here. So I think there is a mistake here, some kind of a mistake. So so let me do this once again. So I'm doing right here actually. So 0.5 R and this R is 1, so I subtract 0.5 R here and this 5,000 remains here. So it is actually 10,000 ohms here. So 0.5 5,000 is equal 0.5 R is equal to 5,000. So the resistance here is equal to exactly 10,000 ohms as I had said earlier. So C is the right option. Question number 31. Three students suggest a consequence of wiring lamps in parallel rather than in series. Now, if student 1 says that if one lamp breaks, the other lamp stay lit. So these is the wiring lamps in parallel. So if one lamp breaks, the other stay lit. Yes, he is true. The lamps can be switched on and off in separately. Yes, if we apply a switch, then we can turn them on and off separately. Whereas the PD across each lamp is equal to the PD across the supply. Yes, the voltage remains the same. So all these three students are very confident about the statements and they are true. So A is the right option. Question number 32. When wire XY is moved downwards between the poles of a stationary magnet, an EMF is produced across X and Y. Which action produces an EMF across X and Y in the opposite direction? Now, if I move this downward, then suppose current will move in this direction. if I move this downward here. But when now I have to reverse the direction of the EMF here. So if I simply move this xy wire, which was supposed at this position when the EMF was inducted here, and when I move this upward, the current will start to move in the backward direction. The EMF would be in opposite direction according to the Lenz's law, as you all know. So if I move the wire upwards, when after it was downwards, and I keep the magnet stationary, an EMF across x and y would be produced in the opposite direction. Suppose if it was produced from x to y, now it will be produced from y to x. So D is the right option. Question number 33. An alternating current is displayed on an oscilloscope screen. The Y gain is set at 2 volts per centimeter. What is the maximum value of the voltage? Now, some of you might directly go for 1, 2, for like 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, the voltage here is 4 into 2 is equal to 8, but this is incorrect. This is an alternating current. So, if there is a positive 2 here, then there would be a negative 2 here. If there is a positive 4 here, then there is a negative 4 here. The total boxes here for the positive on the oscilloscope screen are 2, and each is 2. So I simply multiply 2 into 2, that is 4. So I will go with 4, the positive 4, not, and there is not an option of negative 4, but there could have been. But so remember this, you have to find the maximum voltage, which is always in the positive. This is an AC voltage in a oscilloscope screen. So B is the right option. Question number 34. The results of a scattering experiment show that a very small nucleus contains most of the matter in an experiment. What is scattered in this experiment? So if you see this statement and you think about it, you will get to know this is about the Rutherford's experiment, in which he concluded the planetary model of the atom, and he used the alpha particles in this experiment and a gold foil, and alpha particles were bombarded on a gold foil. So A would be the right option. Question number 35. Atoms P and Q are isotopes of the same element. How does the composition of an atom of P compare with the composition of atom of Q? So for isotopes, the number of protons is same and number of neutrons is different, as you all know. C is the right option. Quite easy. So question number 36. The nucleus of an atom emits an alpha particle. How do the proton number and the nucleon number change? So the mass of an alpha particle is 4, whereas the mass of a whereas the mass of whereas the atomic number of the alpha particle is 2. So suppose, though I will take radium here, 226 radium. You should know the atomic mass of the radium, 88, and this will go on to produce a 222 radon, not radium, 222 radon, along with the radon of atomic number 86, along with the helium nuclei and energy. So what does this mean? That the atomic mass decreases by 4, and atomic number decreases by 2. So proton number decreases by 2 and the nucleon number decreases by 4, means that A is the right option. Question number 37. The diagram shows the thickness of the paper is measured during a manufacture. If the sheet is too thick, fewer beta particles can reach the detector. Okay, so this is the source of the beta particles, and if the sheet is too much thick, then us then most of the beta particles won't be able to reach this detector here. So why are beta particles used for this purpose? Now you have to apply the concepts of penetrating ability here. Gamma particles are most penetrating. They can even penetrate through aluminum. Beta particles would not penetrate through aluminum, and alpha particles can also not penetrate through aluminum because they have a strong ionizing power and strong interacting power. So what does this mean? Why they haven't used alpha particles or gamma particles for this purpose? Alpha particles are all stopped by the paper. Yes, they do not pass through. Alpha particles make the paper radioactive. No, it alpha particles ionizes them. It is not necessary if it makes them radioactive or not. Gamma radiation is all stopped by the paper. No, gamma radiation won't. Gamma radiation can even penetrate to the aluminum. Gamma radiation uh, gamma radiation is only produced by sources with a short half life. No, this is again an incorrect statement. Gamma particles are high energy photons which have very short wavelength, and they are mostly emitted by the unstable excited nucleus. So it is not necessary that their sources should have a short half life. So D is also incorrect. A would be the best choice here. Question number 38, again a very easy question. A sample of tritium has a mass of 32 milligrams. Tritium has a half life of 12 years. How much of the sample decays in 36 here? In 36 here, 12 into 12 into 12 means 3h. 3h is the number of half life passed. So I will have to divide 3 into 2 into 2. So 3 half lives have passed. So 32 divided by 2, that is equal to 16. You divide it by 2 again, that is equal to 8, and you divide it by 2 again, that is equal to 4. So total the total tritium left would be 4 milligrams. So in 36 days, 32 minus 4, that is equal to 28 milligrams. 28 milligrams of tritium would be decayed. So D would be the right option. Question number 39. It takes 27 days for the moon to orbit the earth. Now the average value of the radius of the moon's orbit is 3.8 into 10 to power 8 meters. What is the average orbital speed uh, of the moon? Though this question was also quite tricky for me when I was first solving it. But if you look carefully, that the moon is moving in a circular orbit, means that it is moving on a track which is a circumference of the earth, which is circumference of a track in which earth is the center. Now circumference of a circle is equal to 2 pi r. R is 3.8 into 10 to power 8. If you multiply 2 into pi, which is 3.14, into 3.8 into 10 to power 8, so the total distance traveled by the moon, so no, sorry, the circumference of the track would be 2.4 into 10 to power 9 meter. Now the what is the formula for average orbital speed? Is the speed is equal to total distance divided by total time. Time here is 27 days, but you have to take them in seconds because the units are in seconds as well. So in one day there are 86,400 seconds. You should remember this. So there are 27 days into 86,400, and the total distance is 2.4 into 10 to power 9. Now you do simple calculation here. 2.4 into 10 to power 9 divided by 27 into 86,400. So that is equal to 1000 meters per second. No, if I check this once again, there is some mistake. No, if I check this once again, 27 into 86,400, that is equal to 27 into 86,400, 2.3 into 10 to power 6, and on the upper hand there we have 2.4 into 10 to power 9. So I can simply ignore the points here. 2 divided by 2, and I subtract 6 from 9, so 10 to power 3. So approximately equal to 1000 meter per second would be the average orbital speed of the moon here. So B would be the right option. Question number 40, last MCQ. What is the nuclear reaction that takes place in the stable stars? Now, you all should know that the energy which is coming from the sun and the stars is supposed to be the result of fusion of hydrogen nuclei into helium nuclei with a excessive release of energy at a very high temperature. Now the temperature on the sun surface is nearly about 20 or 30 millions per Kelvin, 20 or 30 million kelvins, which makes this fusion favorable. So for stable stars, first they should have a very high temperature, and that's when the hydrogen will fuse into helium. So I had go with D because fusion of hydrogen and helium takes place in star sun and most of the stars, and most of the stars are stable. So D is the right option. So that's all for our today's video. Make sure to subscribe and like. Press the bell icon for upcoming videos and past papers. So see you in the next video. Goodbye and good night. Allah Hafiz.